Hello, welcome to another vlog. Yes, vlog. That's just what this world needs, is more of me blabbering on the internet.
Coming at your mouth with your blah, blah, blah.
I was actually inspired to do this by my friend Fluff, who does riff beards and gear over on a different YouTube channel, which I'll link somewhere on the screen. This guy right here, that's him. He made a video recently talking about how YouTube works for him, how he makes a living as a full-time guitarist and YouTuber, and I thought I should probably address something similar when it comes to podcasting. I was also inspired to do this because a few local music programs have started to talk about podcasting, and they've asked me to come in and talk to the kids a few times. And after I got some of the same questions over and over again from both kids and adults, I thought this might be a good video to make just for those who are curious. I'm curious. So I'm sure you know what a podcast is if you clicked on this video. If you don't, just search "what is a podcast" and somebody's got a video on that for you.
Professional Google searcher.
This is more about my journey and how I'm able to do what I do as a podcaster. The main question I get asked when people find out what I do is, how do you make money from that? And the answer is, for the first several years, you don't.
Oh, I'm broke, baby. I ain't got no money.
It generally takes quite a while to get any small business off the ground, and podcasting is no different. I think people are a little bit less confused about YouTube because they see the ads and they know that the creator gets a piece of that. Whereas podcasting has no centralized mothership like YouTube does, it's a little bit more of the Wild West when it comes to that stuff. Basically, when your YouTube channel gets to a certain point, YouTube will start sharing the profit from the ads they place on your videos with you. It's not huge, but it is something. With podcasting, in general, you have to either work with a company that will go out and find ads for you, or you have to go find sponsors that want to work with you. And that's what I've done. It took a lot of years, a lot of meetings, a lot of phone calls, a lot of explaining what a podcast is. It took a lot of years of explaining who my audience is and what they like and why they may be interested in these products. It's a lot of groundwork. There's no two ways about it. But I'm in a very fortunate spot now where I have some excellent brands that are signed on for long-term deals, and I truly, truly believe in what they do. So it's really cool to work with people that I really trust, that I know are doing a good job, and also care about the show. Not only did it take the meetings and phone calls, but it also took having a show that people really did listen to and really did care about. And that takes a lot of time. A lot of people want to be PewDiePie overnight, but guess what? Even PewDiePie wasn't PewDiePie overnight.
And he ratted me out for my mom and said that we were hiding cigarettes.
So there are 3 different ad types when it comes to podcasts: pre-roll, mid-roll, and post-roll. I have focused on pre-roll and post-roll for mine just because I, as a podcast listener, don't love mid-roll ads. Now, this has cost me a little bit of money because mid-roll ads are substantially more valuable to advertisers because they are right in the middle of the podcast when the listener is most engaged and least likely to click through them and fast forward because they might be driving or doing something else. It's not to say that nobody ever does that, but it is the most valuable real estate in podcasting. I have chosen not to do that thus far, mostly just because of personal preference, and I've surveyed my audience and they prefer the format as it is. That's not to say I'll never do mid-roll ads, but for now, I am trying to avoid them to the degree that it is possible. It may not be possible one day. That may be the only thing that advertisers want, and I do understand that it could get to that point.
That's just the way it is.
So I'm set up to have 4 pre-roll spots, and I try to keep all of those ads to a minute or under. They're all right in that ballpark, while still delivering value for the advertiser so that the audience who are interested in it know exactly what I'm talking about. Too short and the ad might as well not exist at all. Too long and people start tuning out and getting annoyed. So there's a balancing act that I try to achieve there.
I don't know about that.
As of right now, those 4 pre-roll spots are currently booked for 2022, and I cannot thank those sponsors enough for believing in the show and supporting it at that level. The pre-roll spots I reserve for projects of my own, like the Stringjoy Guitar Strings ad that you'll hear at the end of every episode, or longer-term sponsors like Gun Street, which has also been with me for years and years. Shout out, Sean. The pre-roll spots are a little less valuable simply because that's when people are on to the next podcast, and so not as many people hear those ads, which is totally understandable, but The average listen time on my podcast is over an hour, according to Spotify, so there are a lot of people who do listen all the way through. So that's the most obvious way. The sponsors, they pay money for me to talk about their product. And it should be noted that I won't have a sponsor that I don't think is doing something cool. I never have, I never will, and that's just the way it's going to be.
That's just the way it is.
The other side of it is Patreon. There are people who love the show so much that they will go the extra mile to support on Patreon and get additional content. It's not a huge amount of people who want to or who are able to do that, but it is a massive, massive help. The ones that do tend to stick around long term, and it is insanely helpful to be able to keep doing this full time. So huge shout out to all the patrons of the podcast, whether you're doing that through Apple or through Patreon like most people do. It's enormously helpful. Thank you so much. The other side of it is the collaborative projects I've done. Most recently, you've seen the slice of pie that I did with Big Ear Pedals, and in the past, I've done a ton of collabs with other pedal companies, and that is able to keep me going as well, because I do make a little bit of money from those projects, and people seem to really, really like them. And the last thing I want to talk about is probably the most important aspect of all, and I think it's something that gets really, really overlooked when it comes to podcasting in particular. On top of everything I just mentioned, the main reason I'm able to do what I do is because of the people I've met through the podcast. Whether that's the brands and individuals I've consulted with that found out about me through the podcast, or my more long-term endeavors and partnerships like the one I have with Scott from Stringjoy, all of that came from the podcast. It all came from me having long conversations and meeting new people, and sometimes you just really click, and that can lead to insane opportunities. That is something that I don't hear talked about very often when it comes to podcasting. It's all about sponsorships, Patreon, how do you do XYZ with the podcast. The friendships and network that you build from having hundreds and hundreds of conversations with hundreds and hundreds of different individuals for hours and hours and hours, it's the superpower of podcasting. I think that gets really, really overlooked. So there you have it. That's how podcasting works for me. It's completely changed my life, and I thank you all for tuning in and helping and supporting and spreading the word and everything. So yeah, I just peeled back the curtain a little bit. I hope that made sense, and I hope you enjoyed this ramble. I'll talk to you next time. Good luck and good tones.